Hey guys, I've been wanting to make some videos and content in the last few days, but I've not been feeling well at all. You can probably hear this, but my throat is strained quite a little bit. I'm really trying here and I hope I can get a better voice out in the video, but I'll try to keep my content as consistent as possible, and again, I just apologize for not being there. I just wanted to make this video because End of Zoe and Not a Hero were just released. It's unfortunate this all happened, I couldn't have done this earlier, but there was a lot of things I wanted to address, a lot of things that I wanted to get off my mind, and I just wanted you guys to hear these thoughts that I had, because I wasn't very appreciative of the Not a Hero or End of Zoe DLC. I'm not saying they're not fun to play on their own, but there's some prominent problems I have with them, not just as an RE title, but just game design overall. And I hope you guys do agree with some of these, at least because I think these are prominent and important, and I hope Capcom can listen and address these things. So let's get right into the video as always and talk about these points specifically.
Zoe Baker. She's still breathing. Call in to HQ.
What'd you say, Zoe?
Sir, do you live here?
What the hell's wrong with her?
We're
Zoe!
here to help. So
What
everything...
in God's name have you done?
Sir. Whoa! Stop! Stop!
Oh my goodness, Zoe. What the hell do they do to you?
Right off the bat, we're left to some very questionable situations here. I don't really understand or trust Joe's motives at this point. Umbrella were clearly armed and could have dealt with him when he was approaching up. They didn't seem to resist him or really try to arrest him, and honestly it did actually look like they were trying to help out. But Joe's here just assuming the worst. He just takes them out, and that's another thing that's hard to believe, is the fact that two trained Umbrella operatives who were also trained to fight on BOWs just get taken out in a fist fight by a man, and none of them really respond in the way that I expected. I could kind of accept this in-game logic, except for the fact that, like I said, just accepting that Joe actually saw them as the enemy here is just really strange. But then we have the fact that Joe also is just kind of a random person who just appeared. He's really strong and can take on BOWs. He also is able to fist fight them down. He has questionable motives against Umbrella, as well as seems to not be fazed by absolutely anything. And at points I really thought the DLC was actually going to go places with this. I just kept thinking that something was going to appear, some documents, a cutscene to reference the fact that he was actually infected the whole time and around with the family. But it really thinned out on the plot. Capcom didn't give us anything spectacular, and they left a lot of these questions unanswered, which is something that is going to be an overarching theme over many of the points that I make. Now, the length of the DLCs was far shorter than was advertised in interviews. In the interviews, I do remember Nakanashi or one of the other higher-ups said it would be 2 to 3 hours in length, but this DLC was far below that in length. It was actually completable in about 30 minutes to an hour, which to be honest is quite abysmal for the price tag it had. So guys, I want to know, especially on that point, how you guys feel. Do you think the length of the DLC was actually appropriate for the DLC's price? Because I think that the DLCs these days are very much shorter and contain almost no new assets or proper refined gameplay and details. I remember the days of paying $15 and you'd get a full expansion pack that contained about another 40 hours of content in itself. I felt like the game was very linear, and I was expecting some level of linearity to the game. However, I've played a lot of linear games, and they can be sometimes so deceptive and tricky that you're not even aware that you're actually playing one. I actually expected this to be kind of like a linear Far Cry, considering the fact that we were fighting alligators and had the ability to hunt and other things, but it didn't really flesh these mechanics out. It's like it gave us a really promising set of foundation of tools, but then never really went anywhere with them. Imagine having to advance through parts of the DLCs and hunt to upgrade your equipment and get new things, maybe like a mini Far Cry DLC, but with the fact that there's BOWs and Umbrella operatives within it. Again, I also said in some of my videos that I theorized there was going to be stealth, and that did come out, but it just wasn't too fleshed out or used properly, and it didn't even seem that mandatory considering Joe can just take everything on with his fists. With the amount of linearity it had and the fact that you could just engage everything hands-on, it just allowed you to blow through the content super fast like there was no challenge at all. And again, with the lack of insight and depth, there was nothing else to really add to it. And I do remember them saying that End of Zoe was going to be the more plot relevant as well as the fleshed out DLCs. Another really big plot point that wasn't actually explained properly or at all in the DLC was why the fact Zoe had even properly crystallized in the first place. We were just given little bits of hints about it and nothing direct, and then we got the cure and that was over. There are things that you can indirectly conclude from the in-game DLC, and I will be covering these in future videos, but I just did want to make a criticism piece over this because I think these DLCs could have been much better. Imagine when we went to the Umbrella camps, we had gotten a full analysis over Zoe and showed exactly what had happened, why there was differences between all of the Bakers, and a lot of other analysis, and also a brief glimpse that Umbrella may have been operating in the area for a few years. Something else I really want to discuss, guys, and get into about is the fact that they basically added Iron Man's fist to the game. So if you guys have played the DLC, you would have realized this, but we do basically become a superhero as Joe, even stronger than Chris Redfield, and I'm sure this thing does not only punch boulders, but probably shatters them into a billion pieces. Don't get me wrong, I can see the appeal behind it. I'm not just saying that this is some sci-fi bullshit, and that we shouldn't accept it at all, and I do know that in a realistic sense these kinds of things would be developed, but let's actually explore this from a narrative and game design standpoint. So at this point, these fists are just overpowered. If they allow an average person to take on infected BOWs that can regenerate, as well as many molded and other things, they even had the capability to break down reinforced steel doors, so I'm pretty sure at this point these would be mass manufactured and given to every BOW outfit and would be a core part of every bioterrorism operative's arsenal. However, that would very much break a lot of the franchise. Game developers have to be very careful when incorporating technologies or powers such as these, because it can really have far-fetching consequences, and the only real way that they can look past this is by retconning it as a feature and just saying it kind of never happened. We never really find out who the hive mind of the new molded are. We were left to speculate a lot of things on this, because we know the molded require direction and consciousness to actually make them go somewhere or do something. They don't have their own sentience, and I can see that Jack is the likely candidate here, but again, we're just left to indirectly conclude this without anything with substance actually saying it outright, and I just think that's kind of lazy writing. You're leaving your fans at that point to make all the conclusions without any actual hints, without any implications or shadow little references anywhere, and that's not really the kind of writing that I want to endorse personally. Another major gripe I have about the DLC, and this relates to Not a Hero a little bit, is the fact that Chris Redfield comes in at the end and he's just shown to be the good guy after all, and this is the same thing in Not a Hero. He's just a generic heroic kind of guy getting the job done and doing all the right things, so the title Not a Hero doesn't even make any sense at all. I don't get where they got that from, and again, just like Resident Evil 7 when I said about the base game being rushed and a lot of the features being cut out, I kind of get the sense here something else was planned, things were retconned and changed, but for some reason the DLC's title just didn't change at all. Chris also seemed very resolute at the end, and he doesn't seem to be the emotional mess he was in Resident Evil 6 or Vendetta anymore. He seems very composed and calm actually, relative to that game and movie, so it's just a little bit strange, and again, it just doesn't add up at all to me. I'm not sure if you guys feel anything different about that, but if you could convince me otherwise, I would appreciate it, because I am just very confused at why Chris is not a hero. He took down Lucas, he saved Zoe, he made sure Joe got out alive, as well as got Ethan and Mia out of the situation. What part of this ended with him not being a hero? He saved everybody. Everybody that could be saved, at least. Again, if you think you've got some solid argument against this, I'd like to hear that, because the only devil's advocate thing I said to myself was that, hey, he lost some squad mates, and maybe that's why he considers himself not a hero. However, losing squad mates is very much normal to Chris anyway, and in this kind of environment, it's an expected outcome for many individuals. Another problem I had was how none of the connections between Umbrella were explained in the End of Zoe DLC. Like I said, I wanted some backstory and history behind that, but then it's also the fact that Lucas's connections were not actually established in the Not a Hero DLC, and then you kind of expected, hey, maybe it'll be in the End of Zoe DLC, then maybe at the end when we got the Chris cutscene, but no, we don't get that either. So at the end of the day, we don't even get to see who Lucas's connections are, what corporation is involved, their name, or anything relevant to that, which is a really important part of the universe lore, and it's also the biggest question we've been having since Resident Evil 7 itself came out. So now the only thing we have to go on is the fact that we have a Tensu name, and that was in the case that came along with the E necrotoxin sample. Whether Tensu is the actual organization or just some medical department organization that's exterior to the organization or something else entirely, we'll just have to assume because there's nothing concrete on it. Like I said near the start, that was going to be an overarching theme in this video, is just how thin the plot was and how much we're just left to conclude indirectly, or just some things that aren't explained at all, and especially the big questions. And don't get me wrong guys, I'm not just one of the old Resident Evil fans that played the first few games and can't get over the fact that it's been changed to first person view. I can't get over the fact that you now get a lot of ammunition in Resident Evil 6 and 7, that I can't get over the fact that it's not the T-virus zombies anymore or fixed camera angles. Guys, I'm not that kind of person. I enjoy new games. I also enjoy games that take their previously established core franchise and change it in a whole new different direction. I really appreciated Resident Evil 4, for example. Changing the camera view from fixed camera to the third person view, in my opinion, was one of the best changes they could have made at the time, and it modernized it to a whole new genre. I was actually really looking forward to Resident Evil 7 itself, because Resident Evil 6 had actually let me down with all of the way they changed the systems, and then Resident Evil 7's first person view and the going back to horror roots really excited me. It's just these things don't seem to have actually been fully fleshed out, and especially in the DLCs. I was excited to see the new directions they were going in, for example with the End of Zoe DLC, the ability to hunt gators and things, and I really wanted to see that fleshed out. I feel like Capcom has taken these new routes, and that's acceptable in my opinion, but they decided to implement them in a very lazy way. So for example, they wanted to take it to a new action oriented, you're just fisting everything down, linear campaign. Sure, that can be a lot of fun, but we get about 30 to 45 minutes of gameplay length if you're actually decent at gaming at all. They wanted to leave us to indirectly conclude what things were without really any hints or implications, and so that's just a lazy way of making a mysterious plot. They left titles of DLCs that really don't add up to the actual plot devices that happen, and so it just kind of leaves us confused. All of these things and many more are why I think Capcom have took the lazy route, and I just hope you guys can agree with that. I'm not saying the DLCs are completely bad, and I'll be talking about Not a Hero itself in a separate video, and I'll be criticizing that as well, but then after that, like I said, I'll be talking about some of the positive things as well, because I want to praise Capcom on the good things, and I want to criticize them on the bad things. You've got to have that yin-yang balance, guys, otherwise you will just enable a corporation into giving you shit while you pay them lots of money for it. I actually really love Resident Evil, and I really hope Resident Evil 8 can retcon Resident Evil 7 a little bit, because we've had that previously in the franchise, and I think having Iron Man fists manufactured all over the place and other things would be a very bad thing for the future of Resident Evil. I want to know what you guys think about this below. I'm very passionate about this. Just let me know in the comments if you agree, disagree, think I'm batshit crazy, or if you've got anything to explain to me. Like I said, I would really appreciate if you would explain the Not a Hero DLC's title. If you've taken your time to get here, thank you for watching regardless of whether you agree or disagree, and I just hope you're having a beautiful day as always. I've been coughing a lot here guys, and I'm just gonna get off because I'm not feeling like I can continue the video for too long. Just have a beautiful day, take it easy, and peace.